small kids at Model Tribal School, and coming to this university and not visiting the religious place will not be justice. So I along with my friends went to visit Narmada temple. So I mean this was the schedule actually, that is why I could not come on time. Now when we were discussing, I was just asking that if they are graduate and postgraduate students, so what will be the topic which must be chosen to share my views? I did my research work in the field of African American literature. I teach Indian English literature and modern British poetry. And interacting with BA students and PG students and discussing literary theory and the other emerging areas, that becomes a difficult task for the speaker and also for the listener. For a BA student, discussing deconstruction, structuralism, new historicism, feminism, and all that will be a futile task. So I was just thinking that, let me have a very, that topic which BA students are studying and MA students have already studied that. And I will also judge your knowledge. I mean, you can, strengthen your knowledge by this lecture. So the topic, I think all of you are the students of literature, and you know why are you studying literature. You are studying literature because literature teaches us how to live the life. It gives, meaning to life. That is why we are studying literature. So we're coming to the topic which in literature is called romantic period. And though I was just thinking to, give another topic for you people, but due to the audience, due to the time, I thought that this will be suitable for today's occasion. Now, when we talk about periodization of English literature, so you are familiar with, say, Anglo-Saxon period, Anglo-Norman period, then we have a Renaissance and Elizabethan age and Jacobean age, Caroline age, we have Restoration age, and all these periods of English literature. We have Elizabethan literature, then we, as a reaction to the Elizabethan, dulcet and mellifluous style of the, poets like Spenser and Sidney, we have the metaphysical poetry of John Donne, and then we have such kind of moments. Now, I was just thinking that, why are such kind of movements or trends taking place? So I was reminded of the line which Tennyson used in Maudie Arthur: the old order changeth, yielding place to new, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. This is a famous line of Tennyson from the poem Maudie Arthur. The old order changeth, yielding place to new. Elizabethan poetry continued for a small period of time, then poets started thinking, no, Elizabethan poetry should not continue, and then reaction took place, metaphysical poetry emerged. So we have, in 18th century, the neoclassical trend. If we talk about a neoclassical age, so we have the period like from 1660 to 1798. This is the period which we generally call neoclassical age, 1660 to 1798. Now, out of this period, 1660 to 1798, we have 1660 to 1700 as the Restoration period, which also becomes a part of the neoclassical age. From 1700 to 1744, we call it the age of Pope, because Pope dominated that particular time. And then from 1745 to 1785, we have the age of sensibility or age of Johnson. Johnson died in the year 1785. So this period from 1745 to 1785, we call it the age of Johnson or the age of sensibility. So, neoclassical period from 1660 and to 1785, or say 1789 when French Revolution broke out. This moment which we are going to talk about is known by two names. Sometimes we call it Romantic Revolt, and sometimes we call it Romantic Revival. Now these are the two names which we generally give to this kind of movement. Why this is revolt and why this is a revival? I think you have studied Alexander Pope. Have you studied Alexander Pope in your course? Maybe The Rape of the Lock you have studied, or some other poem. Now, when we say neoclassical poets, we are talking about those poets who focused on wit, who focused on reason, who focused on sense, who focused on a particular kind of language, a highly ornamental language, which we call poetic diction. So, this is a kind of, neoclassical poetry which we have. Now, romantics actually revolted against this kind of trend, and that is why we call it, romantic revolt. Revolt against wit, revolt against reason, revolt against all, tenets of the neoclassical poetry. Now, when we say romantic revival, now this romanticism which we are going to talk about, this romanticism was there in the Elizabethan poetry. If you read, for example, the poems of Spenser or the poems of Philip Sidney, you have this kind of romanticism. What did these poets do during 19th century? They tried to revitalize or re-strengthen the romanticism of Elizabethan poetry, and that is why it is a kind of romantic revival. So whenever you are asked to explain or to define this, you can use the word romantic revolt or romantic revival. Now I personally feel that reading romantic poetry gives me a lot of pleasure. But the poetry must be read like that. I have seen many times the students recite the poems, but recitation becomes quite either dull or prosaic. And when you recite a poem, you are actually at the place of the poet. The tone, the feeling, the mood must be like that. For example, if the curfew tolls the knell of the parting day, your tone must be melancholic. I asked one of the students to recite few lines from the poem Break, Break, Break by Tennyson. So he stood up and he started reciting like break, break, break on the cold grey stone so see. So I said that what is the way of your recitation? Because this is an elegy and you are reciting like a poem of Veer Ras, we call it Hindi. So, there must be some kind of mood and temper also when you recite it. Now, when you recite the romantic poetry, it gives a kind of, lyricism and a different kind of satisfaction. For example, the way the poem Ode to a Nightingale begins. Now, can you tell me how did the poem begin? Any of you? Maybe you must have read it at UG level or you are studying at the PG level. No. How does the poem On His Blindness begin, by the way, if you have studied by John Milton? How does the poem Daffodils by Wordsworth begin? No. Okay. I would like to ask the anchor of this program. She is a second semester student and she will select any poem and tell the opening of the poem. Select any poem of your own choice and tell me the opening. What's your name? Tripti. Yes, you just select any poem of your own choice and tell me the opening lines. Any poem of your own choice, which you are studying at the UG level or you are studying at PG level.
Okay. So, opening line from this Ode to the West Wind, that is. Very good. H3L here, like this.
Not exact lines. Okay, yes, no problem. Sit down, please. You see, I think Ode to Nightingale will be there in a course, maybe at the UG or PG level. The poem is my heart aches and drowsy numbness pains my sense as though hemlock I have drunk. Now, you see, when you recite a poem, especially the romantic poem, then, you will come to know what kind of, features of the romantic poetry are there. Or, you have just taken the example of Ode to the West Wind by P.B. Shelley. There is a stanza in the poem Ode to the West Wind, oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. There is no need to go anywhere else. You just read these romantic poets and you will find out your philosophy of life. The way these poets are, or you just read Daffodils by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud, which generally we take the example of simile. I mean, we are made to learn these examples at the lower level. Now, you see, if you talk about the influences on the romantic poetry, what are the major influences? So I think you have studied Thomas Gray also in your course, and elegy written in a country churchyard must have been there in the course. Now this poem talks about the poor forefathers of the hamlet. This is the line actually in the poem. Those villagers who are buried actually and they are ignored by the people, grass is grown on their graves and all that. This is the description, the tone is very melancholy, this is an elegy. Now, similarly, if you read the poems of William Cowper or Robert Burns or some other writer, you'll find out that these writers actually showed the path to the romantics. So we'll talk about the major influences on the romantic poets, which we are going to discuss. These pre-romantics or traditional poets were the major sources where you will discuss Thomas Gray, William Cowper, Robert Burns, etc. Because the first and the most important thing in neoclassical poetry is the neoclassical poetry, basically the poetry of town life. It describes the town, the city life, and which later on in romantic poetry we'll find out how these romantics are describing the village people. Similarly, romantic poets, these neoclassical poets talk about poetic diction. And when you say poetic diction in connection with neoclassical poets, we are talking about highly ornamental, stilted, beautified and embellished language. When we talk about the word poetic diction, highly, say for example, the neoclassical poets, especially Thomas Gray, he never said sun as sun. He was always calling it the king of the day. I mean, the word sun was replaced by the king of the day. So using the king of the day at the place of sun becomes an example of poetic diction. Highly ornamental language, use of metaphors and other figures of speech. If you read The Rape of the Lock, then you'll find out many figures of speech which you have not heard even. Some figures of speech, for example, simile, metaphor, personification, all that. But there are many figures of speech which you have not heard, and they are there in The Rape of the Lock, because the purpose of Alexander Pope was to beautify the language, the use of the poetic diction. For example, the figure of speech zeugma or the figure of speech synlepsis. You will find out all these figures of speech in The Rape of the Lock. Now, so these traditional poets actually showed the path to the romantic poets, and that is why why were they called traditional poets? All of you will be knowing that the phase was actually the traditional. It was they were neither neoclassical nor romantic poets. The blending of neoclassical features and the romantic features. For example, if you read the poetry of Thomas Gray, especially elegy written in a country churchyard, you'll find out that how the common people are upgraded, how the humanitarian approach is there, how common people are glorified, and the glorification of common people is one of the important features of the romantic poetry. So this is one important quality of romantic poetry which we have in elegy, for example. But on the other hand, Thomas Gray is supposed to be the master or the champion of poetic diction. So poetic diction is actually the quality of the neoclassical poetry. So the poets who have the mixture of the neoclassical and the romantic traits are the traditional poets, but they showed the path to the romantic poets, and that is why there was a critic who said that these are the romantic snakes in the classical grass. This was actually the phrase which was used for these writers who have the romantic spirit, but outer garb is of the neoclassical writers like Dickens and all that. Now, apart from that, you have the French Revolution as the most important source of inspiration for these romantic poets. In French Revolution, we have Rousseau as the main figure of French Revolution, and the French Revolution, which taught the message of fraternity, equality, and liberty. That message actually gave great impetus to the romantic poets. How many of you know the spelling of Rousseau? Can you tell me the... yes, you please.
R-U-S-S-O-U-E.
Anybody else? Is he correct? Is he correct? Or do you want to correct him? It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to spell out this word. Yes. You stand up and tell whatever spelling you know.
R-O-S-S-E-A-U.
R-O? Is she correct? And anybody else wants to correct her? The correct spelling is R-O-U. You are a bit, close to that. R-O-U. S-S-E-A-U. Okay, sit down. Now, you see, if you will not speak, like if a teacher is asking question and if you fear from your, the answer, then this is a kind of drawback of your personality, I'm telling you. Once I was delivering a lecture and I said, do you know the word of fear? F-E-A-R. Fear has actually the two meanings. F-E-A-R. The first fear is forget everything and run. You are in the class. If I ask a question, you just, bend down your head so the teacher will not see you. And you think that the lecture will get over after say 10-15 minutes. So where is sir? Forget everything and run. The second is F-E-A-R, face everything and rise. So I think second option is good for you. You have to face everything. Because today if you're not able to reply, maybe you are wrong, no problem. Once Dr. Kalam was actually asked how do you get success? So Dr. Kalam said, success, you can achieve success by experience. How does experience come? So he said, when you commit some mistake, then you will learn something and you will be experienced. So committing the mistake is not bad. If she has come from that place to this place and conducting the program, she is doing a wonderful job. Because later on, she will become a great anchor. You can also do that. So, behave like that. You see, and develop. Yesterday I was delivering a lecture in that seminar, which was specially devoted to Swami Vivekananda, who said that Atmavishwas is very important for, confidence is very important for every person, especially for the students. And I said that, why don't you remember Ratan Tata's statement, who once said that I don't take right decisions. I don't take right decisions. I take decisions first and then make them right. I think this is the confidence. You must develop all these things, and this is the need of today. And you students can do that. You have to be in contact with your teachers, and you will learn all these things, because sometimes it happens the teacher asks you that, have you prepared this poem? You very cleverly said, yes, I have done everything. I know each and every line of the poem. But the teacher immediately catches your eyes that you are telling lies. You basically don't know. So I was interacting with my students, and I said that, do you know that real eyes realize real lies? So what the real lies are there, real eyes realize. So, you must never, you must be confident enough in the class, be interactive with your teachers, and don't try to shirk yourself from such kind of thing. You have to respond. So, talking about this now, when we talk about the definition of the Romanticism, there are thousands of definitions. There was one writer called F.L. Lucas. He wrote a book, The Decline and Fall of Romantic Ideal, which was published in 1948. So he said that there are around 11,396 definitions of Romanticism. So how will you define Romanticism? But there are certain representative definitions of Romanticism. One definition by Victor Hugo, that Romanticism is liberalism in literature. This is one of the most popular definitions. On feelings and emotions is one of the important qualities of romantic poetry. I think you people will be knowing the important definitions of poetry given by William Wordsworth. How did William Wordsworth define poetry? Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotions recollected in tranquility and preface to the lyrical ballads. And we have just, later on, if you study the criticism paper and if you study tradition and the individual talent by T.S. Eliot, then he said Wordsworth's formula is inexact. Poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, it is an escape from emotion. That is a different thing in 20th century. But the first and the most important quality of romantic poetry is that there is an emphasis on feelings and emotions. This is just the reaction against the neoclassical poets who is stressed on wit and reason. What did actually neoclassical poets say, especially Alexander Pope? Alexander Pope said that true wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was thought, but never is so well expressed. Actually, this is the line from Alexander Pope, that they emphasized on wit, not on feelings and emotions. Now, next important quality which we have extracted from these definitions is love for the past. Love for the past or love for the Middle Ages. Love for the past especially is love for Greek art and culture, or love for the Middle Ages. There are so many examples in Keats' poetry where we find the love for Greek art and culture. And I think one poem, maybe you must have studied, Ode on Grecian Urn, where the love for the Greek art and culture is there. He was a great adorer of Greek art and culture. It was so much so that P.B. Shelley said that Keats is a Greek. Now, this was a statement which was given by P.B. Shelley, and we are confused sometimes that why Keats is said as a Greek. It is Keats is a Greek means Keats is a worshipper of Greek art and culture. Now, the next important quality which we have is a love for freedom and liberty. And maybe love for freedom and liberty, you have the example, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. I mean, the theme of emancipation, freedom is there in the poem Ode to the West Wind. And this kind of theme, the theme of freedom and liberty, I think the main source is the French Revolution. Then the next is rejection of rules and regulations and conventions. The neoclassical poets are the poets who followed rules and regulations. They are called neoclassical because they said that I'll follow the rules and regulations which are laid by the classical writers, because I am also as great as the classical writers. So they were not deviating from the path. They were just sticking themselves to the rules laid down by classical writers. These romantic poets rejected against these rules and regulations, and that is why Victor Hugo said that romanticism is liberalism in literature. Now, next important quality which we have in the romantic poetry is a love for, I think, nature. You know that, Wordsworth is a great poet of nature. And Wordsworth, whenever we say that who is the great nature poet, we always say Wordsworth is a great nature poet, who said, let nature be your teacher. One impulse from a vernal wood may teach you more of a man than all the sages can. One of the most important lines of William Wordsworth. And you see, if you have, no poet is as great nature poet as William Wordsworth, because William Wordsworth believes that God is there behind all the objects of nature. There is the divine presence, there in the nature. And those who are the research scholars and who are the PGs, they will be knowing that, there is a one word pantheism for that, if there is divine presence behind the objects of nature. So he was a great pantheist. So love for nature is another quality of these romantic poets. Then we have supernaturalism, again an important quality.